What's up, movie lovers? I'm Mike, and this is Gotta Love Them Movies. You guys, welcome back to another edition of Gotta Love Them Movies, your daily dose of movie news. I'm your host, Mr. Mike Brown. I'm here all the time. Guys, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your busy day, your busy week, your busy schedules to spend some time with us here in the YouTube studio. I think my guest from yesterday, Mr. Jonathan Pitts, he was asking me like after the show was over, like, what do I call my YouTube studio? Like, do I have a nickname for it? And I don't have a nickname for it, but if anybody has some suggestions as to what I should kind of call like this, it's not really a man cave. It's I don't know, wall of toys. I don't know, something like that. Jump down in the comment section below and throw me some suggestions. I think we're kind of toying around with like the Marvelous Studio, or something like that. The Marvelous Studio, you know, play on words for Marvel. Of course, I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan, so I was trying to find some way to like throw some Ninja Turtle terminology. Oh, that's not working very well. Anyway, guys, on the show today, my guest is a very special friend. That makes it sound like we're dating. But then again, for a while, I guess you could have called us a common law married. Mr. Josh Hurley, returning back to the show. Please put your hands together for Josh Hurley. Woo, 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 woo! Josh, how's it going, buddy? How you doing? Oh, you're looking very stoic today. I have a feeling that your Skype cut out. Oh, no, this is embarrassing. All right, so it looks like Josh's Skype has cut out. Let me see if I can end the call and try to call him back real quick, see if that resets anything. Of course, this is just one of the worst things that could possibly happen when you're doing a live show. So let's get rid of Josh. Let's do just me for now. Anyway, guys, like I said, thank you so much for joining. Thanks so much for being a part of the show today. If you're looking at if you're looking in my eyes, you will notice that I am not exactly looking at the screen right now. So Josh is texting me. He says, oh no, I can still see and hear you. Oh, so Josh can see and hear me. I'm trying to end the call. It seems like something has gummed up. Josh, if you're still watching, can you end the call from your end and then call me back and we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Anyway, guys, I'm just going to carry on. So yeah, we're going to jump in and do a little bit of movie news. When Josh comes back, I'll let him introduce himself and all sorts of that. But while we're waiting for Josh to come back, I highly anticipate, that's not the word, I highly encourage you to head on over to YouTube and check out our YouTube channel there. Once you get there in the top right hand corner, you're going to see a little red button that says subscribe. Go ahead and click on that button. What clicking on that subscribe button does is it helps us to widen our subscriber base. But Mike, you say, we're watching this show on Facebook Live. Why do I need to go over to YouTube and to subscribe on your page? Well, you guys, it's really rather simple. When you subscribe to the channel, we get more people that watch the videos. And with more people that watch the videos, that means I get to qualify for ad revenue. And with ad revenue, I get to make this show my full-time job. So I very much appreciate you going over and subscribing on the YouTube channel. And of course, as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers, this show will be moving from Facebook to YouTube. So just something to be aware of over there. All right, I'm going to check in with Josh Hurley and see if he is back. Oh, I can hear the do. Is Josh Hurley there, please? Oh, Josh Hurley. Oh, there you are. There he is. Josh Hurley, thank you so much for bearing with us in that whole intro. Yeah, no, I think probably from my end. So Josh, you've been a guest on the show before. You know the format. You know what's going on. Let the good people at home know what's your deal? What do you do for a living?
What's my deal? My deal. My name is Josh, and I am an actor and a performer, as is Mr. Mike Brown. I do improv, as does Mr. Mike Brown. I am for work, audiobook narrator. I read out loud for a living, uh, yeah, and I love it. I love
And
it.
you are an award-winning voice actor, which I think bears mention because it's true. He's a
Well, thank you.
two-time award-winning voice actor for his work on various Audible audiobooks from Audible.
Audiobooks,
Yeah,
sure, yeah.
and he's just an all-around lovely, lovely, great guy. So, Josh, thank you so much for being here and helping us talk about some movies and movie news. And while we're talking about movies and movie news, it's time to talk about some movies and movie news.
What?
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 All right, you guys, let's. I feel like today's show is a little bit fly by the seat of your pants. If you're watching at home, I apologize for that. Today's just a weird day, right? I think we can all admit today is a weird day in the world. Why? Well, this is why. Pixar's Soul, the movie Soul. If you've been watching the show at all, you would know that this is one of the movies that I am just so ridiculously excited to see. Previously, I think I had Soul listed as my fourth most anticipated film coming out this year. It was right behind, I think it went Black Widow, then Wonder Woman, then James Bond, No Time to Die, and then it was Soul. But guess what? All the other movies, with the exception of Wonder Woman, have been pushed back to 2021. Even still, I think I would go ahead and re-rank these. Even if those movies were still coming out this year, I still think I would re-rank this as my third most anticipated film of the year. I'm just so looking forward to this. The music looks brilliant. If you're not familiar with the story of Soul, it tracks the story of this man in New York. I think it's in New York. He's an aspiring musician, a jazz musician. He gets an audition. He gets a callback. I'm not sure if it's just a callback or if he's getting hired for the gig. I think he's getting hired for the gig. And then he falls down a manhole and presumably dies. And now we follow his soul on an adventure through not just the afterlife, but also the pre-life, which is a really interesting take. I know not a lot of religious ideology or theology involves the concept or the idea of a pre-existence, and I think the movie, being that the movie is going to explore this idea of a pre-existence, is so cool. It's it's kind of an original idea that we haven't really seen in film and in storytelling. And to help this originality, there are three mainstream musicians who are helping to bring this movie to life from a musical aspect. One would be Jon Batiste. If you're not familiar with Jon Batiste's work, he is I guess you could call him the co-host of, was it The Late Show with Stephen Colbert? He's the musical director on Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He's a jazz musician from New Orleans. Maybe this movie takes place in New Orleans. Maybe I got it wrong with New York. I don't know. Us New Yorkers, we like to think that everything revolves around New York, right? But anyway, so Jon Batiste is doing the music, like all the jazz music for the character in the movie. And like he's a brilliant jazz musician. So I'm really looking forward to that. But in addition, we also have Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who, if you're not familiar with their work, Trent Reznor, first and foremost, is the guy from Nine Inch Nails. He is Nine Inch Nails, the very popular kind of hard, kind of not necessarily indie music, but alternative music, but like a really, really hard alternative music from the 90s. And so, yeah, he is teamed up with Atticus Ross and, film composer, and the two of them have worked on multiple films and television shows together. They worked on Gone Girl. They won awards for The Social Network, the movie The Social Network. They most recently won an Emmy for scoring Watchmen, the Watchmen show on HBO Max. And I like this. I could not be more excited for this music to come out. And as this article points out, Disney's going to be releasing not just one soundtrack, but two. It sounds like, yes, the score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, but as well, the jazz music being written by John Baptiste. I am over the moon. Josh, I am completely over the moon for this. I think this is such a cool idea, musically, but also it shows that there's going to be enough music in this movie that we're going to be able to get two soundtracks, completely two different download albums, essentially. Or if you're not a downloader, you can actually, you can actually go out and buy the albums themselves. Josh, I know you may not be as much of a movie score person as I am, but I know you're very much into movie scores as well. What's your take on this? And first of all, how excited are you to see the movie Soul?
I think Pixar is, even if it's one esteemed over time. Like, I feel like Cars was a great movie, but I feel like people are kind of like, okay, Cars, whatever. But it's still great. And so Pixar always, they just always have a good quality product, and they really do deliver. Whether you love it or not, you can always say this is good quality, I think. Having said that, yeah, this looks great. I think it's a really cool idea. I think they're going into like a really cool concept. Was Coco Pixar, or was that just Disney? I believe that was just Disney, right?
Yeah.
Just Disney, right. So this idea of sort of like kind of the supernatural / pre-life, pre-existent stuff is kind of cool that they're going in that direction, and I think it's a really cool thing. And I think with the jazz aspect of it, the music and the setting, it would make sense if it was, but definitely would make sense if it was, New Orleans, because it can be so many things, like a physical
double
soul,
entendre, yeah.
Soul music, the soul of, there's a lot, like, I feel like soul and New Orleans seem to sort of like go hand in hand. Those two words would connect, definitely. So I think it's going to be great, and I love the idea of two soundtracks. I think that's a really innovative, fun, cool thing. Choose your own soundtrack, and I mean, I think the only danger there is the gimmick stronger than the product, and if it's more just for the gimmick, and the product doesn't, it's going to fall a little flat. But obviously you have two great talents. I think as long as the gimmick isn't the only thing that's, pulling that through.
No, I think they're going to be doing a pretty good job in this regard, in keeping it less gimmicky and more about like the art and specifically the music. I think this is a great idea, and it's something that we haven't really seen for a long time, which is two soundtracks for one movie. I remember in the mid '90s growing up, Mission Impossible. The very first Mission Impossible movie had two different soundtracks. There was the score, and then there was music that was inspired by the movie, which, like, kind of blows your mind, because pretty much every song, not every song, but, most of the songs that were on that album were not in the movie. It was just, hey, let's create a compilation of music, and we'll slap the Mission Impossible logo on it, and we'll ship it out, and we'll get more money for it, right?
Right.
In more recent times, Guardians of the Galaxy very famously has the score to the film, and then, the soundtrack of all, like, the pop songs that they used throughout the film. Yeah, I think, like, anytime you're able to do something like that, kind of break it up, me being me, I love my film scores, and it's so frustrating to me when you get, like, a film score track, a film score track, a pop song track, a film score track, a pop song track. Like, when you mix all that stuff in together, it just gets messy, and, like, you just want to listen to it all the way through without having that jimble jamble back and forth a little bit.
Oh, totally. And I think that's the whole thing. Like with soundtracks, like if you're listening to the score, you're probably wanting to listen to the score. If you're listening to the soundtrack, if you're listening to the music soundtrack, you're probably wanting to listen to the soundtrack. Like there's a difference between the Guardians of the Galaxy score and the soundtrack, like you said. And obviously, if you're like at a party or something and you're playing the soundtrack, and then all of a sudden this like beautiful score for this moment comes up, it's like, you're right. So it's just like, here's the score, here's the soundtrack. Let's split those up. Do we know, is this project going to be is it going to be score soundtrack? Is it going to be soundtrack? Or is it going to be, I mean, that's kind of a weird delineation because both could be either, but are they going to play one in one theater, one in another, or is it all going to just be released as one, and then you can hear the other score?
I'm confused by what it is that you're asking.
So is say the Trent Reznor version going to be released in one theater and the John Baptiste version in another theater?
Oh, okay. No. It's all going to be one. So John Baptiste. Let me back up. So the movie is about this one guy who's a jazz musician, and whenever he's playing that jazz music, that's the music that John Baptiste is writing. But then the score to kind of fill out the emotional level and kind of like musically what is happening, that's all Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, because for some reason I was picturing that like they were commissioning two different soundtracks. Like John Baptiste, you write one, Trent Reznor, you write one, and now you can sort of almost like interchange them at certain moments and like here's the score for this version and here's the score on this version.
That would be extremely experimental, and I could see Disney doing something like that, but not with this property.
That's what I meant with like the whole like gimmicky thing. I was thinking it's kind of a gimmick if they do this, but if it works, it works.
So like what you're
like they did.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No. After you.
Yeah. No.
Well, all I was saying was I know they did it with the movie with Clue when they released it in 1985. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I know you love that movie too.
It's funny that you bring up Clue because that's what I was just about to talk about. Yeah, so
it could have ended like this, or but I watched an old Siskel and Ebert where they kind of like ripped it apart, where a different ending to a different theater and said here is theater. Then the way they did it was they said here's theater A. With this ending, here's B is this ending and C is this ending. So you can go, oh, I'm going to go to see Clue, but it's A over here, and Clue, but C over here. And they thought, oh, great, three times the money made. But the problem was the endings were so short that it really didn't make much of a difference. And I think Gene Siskel's comment was the idea that like if the movie is the plot is like weak enough in terms of like who done it to like facilitate three different endings, then can you really sort of guess along through the movie? Because if it's too watery and it's too open-ended, then it's like you can't really guess. The other thing was they didn't make a lot of money doing that, and there was only one good ending. So their whole thing was let's all release them at the same time, ABC, which they did for the VHS, which was smart, and that's how they probably, in retrospect, I'm sure Paramount wishes they would have just done that in the theater. Point is, with this, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, are they going to release one in one theater, one in the other? Is it going to have like a Clue scenario sort of thing? But I see. Again,
that would be really cool if they were doing that. That's not what they're doing. But my big question is for you guys: how excited are you to see the movie Soul? We know that's being debuted on Christmas Day on Disney Plus, so something we can all kind of like rally around and look forward to, and anticipate in that regard. So first of all, how much are you looking forward to this film? And two, are you excited by the soundtracks as, just as much as I am? Or are you just kind of like, meh, whatever, soundtracks, it'll be in the movie and I'll watch it there. Jump down to the comment section. Comic? I keep doing that. Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys, moving on to our second bit of movie news for the day. And this is technically not a movie. Technically, this news is not about a television show, but it is about the television show Stranger Things. Now, in Los Angeles very recently, in preparation, anticipation leading up to Halloween, there was a kind of a drive-through it's an experience. The only thing you can equate it to is like a haunted house, but the way they did this, the way that, Stranger Things and the way that Netflix combined their forces, and they're pretty much one entity, right? They made like this drive-through experience. So essentially what they did is they took an entire parking garage, and converted it so that like various levels and different parts of the parking garage are sectioned off by like makeshift walls, temporary walls. They put in all of this lighting and sound effects, and there's like a radio station that like if you are going to be a part of this experience, you turn your car radio to, I think it was like 90.3 FM or something like that, and then all the music and the sound effects, and there's like actual actors interacting with your cars. And so they kind of reenact like the last act of season 3 from Stranger Things. They kind of go through like if there were supplemental materials or supplemental shots or scenes for Stranger Things. I guess you could kind of say that these are like all the cut scenes from Stranger Things season 3. And you go through like various portions. So if you're familiar with the story of Stranger Things season 3, then like you can piece together like, oh, we're here, but then this other part of the story that's actually in the show is taking place over on this side, and you can kind of like piece all this stuff together. So you go from like checkpoint to checkpoint to checkpoint. This experience looks so cool. Josh, you had a chance to see some of this, like other people that have been through the experience. Some of them filmed it on their phones and uploaded it to YouTube. I watched one of them. I sent it to Josh. What were your initial reactions or knee-jerk thoughts about this?
Well, honestly, at first when I read the headline and when you sent this to me, I thought, oh, that's cool. They're doing a showing of Stranger Things at like a drive-in theater, and I was like, well, that's great. I love drive-ins, and I think it's great that we're sort of bringing them back now with everything because they're a really fun experience. But then when I saw the video, I was like, oh, like I see what you're saying. Like this is a completely interactive. Well. And we kept talking about this, like, what do you call it, really? It's sort of this experience, but it's interactive, but it's not because you're in your car, but you are interacting, you're moving through. It's like an amusement park ride, but instead of the buggy or whatever, the car, and you're driving at your own pace. And like you said, I think there's people that make sure they move them along. So I think it looks really cool. It looks like a great, fun, exciting way to stay safe for people. Experience. And it looks like the production value is super high on this in terms of like lights and sounds and like acting. Like they got a bunch of actors for it, so it's not just like a parking garage with a few streamers and it's like, welcome to the upside down, ooh, scary. Like it's like legit like production value. So you're like, wow, this is really cool. So it's a good haunted house. It's like a walk-through haunted house, but with your car.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the production value that sells this. Like I'm sitting here trying to like verbal diarrhea explain like what is this and how does it work. But I mean, the thing that I really undersold is that it has this high production value. Yes, you're inside of a parking lot, parking garage or whatever, and you go through level by level, and you have people guiding you through, but it's they have these videos in some sections. There are video screens. So there's this one section, spoiler alert, but I mean, come on, how many of us are going to drive to LA to do this thing? There are video screens on either side of you as you drive from one section to the next that depict you driving into and through into the upside down. It's like you're going through this portal that takes you into the upside down. And it's like the detail is so attuned that, you know how like whenever they depict the upside down in the show, there's always like those floating kind of like, it's not dust, but it's almost like floating little bits of flesh or tissue, just kind of like hanging in the air. They did that. I don't know how they did that, but they did that, like for real. And just again, like the music that's coming through, like the radio of your car, it's all timed. Everything is perfectly timed. This looks so cool. So I'm
Yeah.
hyping this whole thing up, Josh. I'm hyping it up. I'm hyping it up. I'm hyping it up. But here's my main question. Stranger Things season 4 just started production. They just started filming like a week ago. So it's going to be a while before season 4 comes out on Netflix. My main question is, why do this now? Why, I get it. It's Halloween and like we want to, raise people's spirits and whatever, but if you're going to hype up, if you're going to spend this kind of money on this kind of an experience, why not make this like a one-off that's, a month before the actual release of season 4? Why do this now? Like, what's the point? What's the benefit? Because this thing was not cheap. This was not cheap to put on. And I get it. You're selling tickets. So hopefully they're going to be earning some kind of a revenue, or at the very least breaking even. I have no idea how much they spent on this, but can you, what's the benefit to doing this now? Do you see anything, Josh?
That's a good question. I think the big question for me is who's producing it?
Netflix.
What is sort of so Netflix is, I mean, in terms of, did they produce this experience? Yes. Oh, great. Okay. So yeah, that does really beg the question, like what is their end game on that? Is it to sort of drum up viewership for the previous seasons, to sort of amp it up and get people back on track for the next season? I know that like studios are, I'm sure you know, like where well they are probably very studious about trying to like figure out when they're going to get their biggest bang for their buck when it comes to releasing things. So I'm sure there was some talk of this. I don't know if the departments were as maybe like in touch with each other about that. It's like, here's our sort of like PR or advertising group, and we have this really cool idea. Let's do it for Halloween. And then the other side's like, yeah, great, go for it. Or if the production side was like, hey, we want something to sort of really amp up the interest in this. Yeah, you're right. The timing of this does seem a little odd, other than the fact that it is Halloween, which is great. And it gives people sort of a safe, way to sort of have a haunted house walkthrough sort of thing. But in terms of combining, like, what does that do for Netflix and what does that do for them? My best guess is it like just drums up interest in Stranger Things. It reminds people that it's there, because after all, and we talked last time about like Netflix having like flagship properties. I think if Netflix has any flagship properties, it's definitely Stranger Things. And I think Stranger
Hands
Things,
down.
maybe they're just so maybe they're just trying to keep that in people's minds. Yeah, but that's a really good question. I honestly don't know. I don't know kind of what their reason.
That's a great point, because I can only see the downside, the negative effect of this. I mean, maybe if this is something that they had already planned, they're like, hey, Stranger Things season 4 was supposed to start filming like back in November or December of last year. Everything got delayed, everything got pushed back, and then with the advent of COVID, it just got delayed that much more, So I can see if this was something that they had planned originally, and like, let's put this thing out for Halloween. It'll be kind of like this walkthrough or like this drive-through thing. But then again, the drive-through aspect of it seems very tailored to COVID. So yeah. I mean, it's possible that they had this idea and they wanted to do it, and it was in the budget, and they had already planned for it. And instead of delaying it, I mean, well, let's figure out a way how we can tailor it to a COVID situation. I don't know. It's cool, and I like that they did it. It's, if this was more of a licensing kind of a thing where like a haunted house company was like, hey, we want to do something really cool. Let's do it Stranger Things themed. Yeah. I think that would have made more sense. But being that this was a Netflix sponsored event, it seems like a waste of money. It seems like a waste of money in terms of marketing. Because again, like, just hold off like another year, because that's essentially how long we're gonna have to wait for season 4 to come out. So just hang on a little bit, pump your brakes. I don't know. My question to you guys is, do you see any other way? Is there something that we're leaving out, something that we're not thinking about? And also, is this the kind of thing that you would... do you live in Los Angeles? And if so, are you going to go to this? And if not, are you close enough to LA that you would consider driving there to go through this experience? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys, we have one last bit of movie news to discuss today, and that comes in the form of not just the Justice League, but the DCEU. If you have been keeping tabs on the Justice League movie, on the Flash movie, on Man of Steel, on Batman vs. Superman, on Wonder Woman, on Shazam, on Aquaman, on Suicide Squad, you would know there is very little consistency between these films. Like the main three, I guess you could say, like Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, maybe a little bit of Wonder Woman. Kind of, I mean, the Wonder Woman movie kind of stands alone on its own thing. It ties in a little bit. I guess you could say the same thing for the Suicide Squad. It kind of ties in a little bit. Or even Aquaman. Yeah, it kind of ties in a little bit. Or Shazam. It kind of ties in a little bit. But, all those other ones kind of, they're more so standalone films. But, we have Man of Steel. We have Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And then we have Justice League. Those three films, kind of in their entity, represent kind of the DCEU. And it didn't really work. The DCEU didn't really work. The first Suicide Squad movie was, I don't want to say it was a failure, but it did not work very well at all. Not a lot of people liked it. Batman vs. Superman, boy, oh boy, does that movie have mixed reviews. I'm right in the middle. Like, depends on the day. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a garbage movie. And then sometimes I think about it and I'm like, you know what? There's a little bit of merit to it. It wasn't the worst. It's definitely not the worst film in the world. Could be better. Could be shorter. Could be better. Justice League, I did not like at all. I did not like that movie at all. But, we're kind of in this new state where Walter Hamada, who is the president of DC Films, and there's other controversy going on with Walter Hamada and specifically the actor who plays Cyborg, but we're gonna shelve that for now. We've talked about it in the past. But, Walter Hamada, as the president of DC Films, has done a lot of good in kind of restructuring the way that we're going about the DC superhero movies. He made the executive decision to make Aquaman a standalone film. I understand that Wonder Woman was made a standalone film before Walter Hamada got there, but still kind of a standalone film. Shazam, a standalone film. I mean, like I say, these loosely kind of tie in, but there is no more standalone film than the Joker movie that came out last October, which I think is completely brilliant. I love that movie. We have The Batman in production right now, which looks to be like a standalone film starring Robert Pattinson as Batman. We also know that Ben Affleck will be coming back to reprise his role as Batman in the upcoming Flash movie. What else do we have? Birds of Prey, Birds of Prey, and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, I believe is the title of that movie. Got mixed reviews. I love that movie inside and out. I think it's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. Has a lot of heart, but also like a lot of gross things that you would expect to see in a movie like that. So I really enjoyed the Birds of Prey movie. But, Josh, we're starting to see a lot of like these standalone films, these standalone superhero movies. We have the upcoming Flash movie, which actually might help to, not to retcon per se, but to fill in the gaps as to why there's all these different universes, all these different standalone parallels. In the comics we have like Earth 1 and Earth 2 and Earth 3 and so forth and whatever, Infinity. So how do you see the future of the DCEU going down? Do you think in the future we're going to get another Justice League movie? Do you think they're going to do it better? Do you think they're going to follow the model of Marvel? How do you see all this stuff shaken down?
It's a great question. And as you know, comics and comic book movies are not my strong suit. However, I definitely love keeping up with kind of what's going on and seeing what's happening. So I definitely think, in that regard, I don't have as much insight. But I would say it seems to me, and especially as someone maybe who isn't as into to each of the individual properties in the Marvel universe and in the DC universe. However, I do love the movies. Like, I love all the Avenger movies. I love all the Batmans. Batman '89 is like one of my favorites. But having said that, I think it's interesting because I feel like Marvel kind of somehow got the cinematic universe. And DC, to me, sort of seems like they've kind of just tried to be doing a lot of catch up and trying to like, hey, we're here too. Like, hey, we got this thing too, and it's cool. And I don't know if there's a sort of feeling about that or an attitude about that that's affecting things with their universe. But I also feel like they have some really good properties, and they're just trying too hard to mush them together and really make it work in a cinematic universe. Like, Superman is like one of the most iconic superhero figures of all time. Marvel or DC, doesn't matter. Same thing with Batman. And then you have like Justice League and Fantastic Four. Is that?
Oh, that's Marvel. Fantastic Four is Marvel.
Okay, so that's Marvel. So, but they have Justice League. They've got Aquaman. They've got like the Flash. They've got a lot of.
I've heard it spoken of a lot in the past, and one of the big problems. Well, first of all, you have the big problem of DC playing catch up, like what you said. Like Marvel, you know, they took their time. They made one really good movie with Iron Man. And then they made another solid movie in The Incredible Hulk. It wasn't really good, but it was solid enough to say that, okay, cool, we're very slowly building a foundation. They made a really good movie with Captain America. They made a pretty good movie with Thor. And then bringing all these characters together was completely unprecedented in one of the greatest comic book movies ever, The Avengers. So they laid the groundwork. They took the time. But then, as you say, it's pretty obvious DC, they tried to jumpstart their cinematic universe with the Green Lantern movie starring Ryan Reynolds, and that just flopped miserably. But, once they restructured and they said, you know what, let's try to take this in the same direction as the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight movies, and hence we got Man of Steel, which continued on into Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the tone just didn't feel right. But there's all of that. But there's also this idea that exists of how do you create or craft a story around gods? Look at Superman. He's the most powerful being in the universe so far, to date. He's the most powerful in the cinematic universe. He's the most powerful. He has very little can hurt him. Okay, there's a tiny little space rock. And that can hurt him. Nothing else does, but a tiny little space rock does. Okay, cool. And then you have Wonder Woman, who is the daughter of essentially, she's kind of a god herself. You have Aquaman, who is the king of Atlantis. Kind of a godlike ability to swim underwater, to breathe underwater, and to speak with animals, underwater aquatics. You have the Flash, who is, yes, he's just a man. He's just a guy who can run really, really fast. He had this accident, right? He had an accident that made him the Flash. You have Batman, who is not quite a god. And, we've had so many great Batman movies. And I think that's why we keep going back to Batman, is because he's relatable. We can relate to this guy who's just angry and bitter and hates the state of the world, so he does something about it. I feel like we can relate to that. It's hard to relate to a godlike character like Superman, like The Wonder Woman movie was fantastic. But with these more godlike attributes, how do you make them relatable? How do you relate to a person that, you shoot them and bullets just literally bounce off? So that's, I don't know. How do you humanize a character like that, Josh?
That's tough, and I think you bring up a really good point, because Marvel has, with the Avengers, those characters are all, at least a good chunk of them are all human. They're all fallible. They all have sort of certain abilities and things, like Bruce Banner is, he's a human, but when he gets angry, he becomes the Hulk. Peter Parker was a normal kid, but he got bit by a spider. Now he's Spider-Man. Iron Man is sort of the Bruce Wayne of the Marvel universe, right? He's like the super rich inventor, create this great suit, but he's still human. So you have a lot more relatable Captain America. You have a lot of these relatable characters that you mentioned in this universe. And so that's in a weird way, I think, stacking the deck for Marvel, which is great. And you're right. Like DC has these characters that are, I mean, like, Superman is sort of an Achilles, right? Like it's like he's powerful except for this one spot on his heel, or sort of the Rock. You've got the Hercules, which is like the Wonder Woman. It's like the son, the slash daughter of gods, like, sort of this. There's a lot of and like Poseidon with
Aquaman, yeah,
with Aquaman, and you've got a lot of this sort of Greek mythology, but it does sort of have this separation of like, well, that's great and all, but that's not something that like I feel like we can sort of aspire to or sort of like emulate, because they have these otherworldly powers. So I mean, I don't know, maybe that's in terms of style, maybe that's and Batman, most successful I would venture Superman and Batman most successful properties. Of those two, Batman most successful property for DC in terms of film, and Batman is exactly that. He's a character that you can relate to. He's a character that has deeply flawed, deeply has a lot of things he's working through emotionally. So I mean, that's a great character. I mean,
and I hate to say it, but I mean, yeah, you're right. Batman is probably the best character of all of the Justice League characters, because he is the most relatable. And that's probably why we have the most Batman movies out there. But I still see, like, something that I want to see more of is, like, how do we humanize some of these characters? Like, they're already crushing it with Wonder Woman, and we've only had one standalone Wonder Woman movie. We're still waiting on the second. Hopefully it'll come out on Christmas Day. It probably won't. It's probably the smart move for Warner Brothers to push that back maybe 6 months to a year. Probably the smarter move there. If movie theaters can survive. But I think they did a pretty good job with the Aquaman movie, and it's fantastic. It's like it was written and directed by Justin Lin, who did a whole bunch of the Fast and Furious movies, so it definitely has that bombastic, like, over the top, this is ridiculous kind of thing, right? But it was fun, and it was humanizing, because here's this guy who's in a fantastical position, who can do fantastic things, and he just wants to be left alone. It's very much that Logan, very much that Wolverine kind of lone wolf idea. And I think that's what's engaging about that. Right. Same thing with Wonder Woman. Here's this person who has this very specific view of what the world is, and when she goes out and ventures into the world for the first time, hang on, whoa, this is not what I was expecting. So we have this naivete, this humble innocence that we want the world to be sometimes,
Right.
With Superman, I want, what are the weaknesses of Superman besides a little bit of space rock, a little bit of kryptonite, his love for Lois Lane, it's the people around him that can be hurt. And I think they kind of explored that a little bit in BVS, but I need more humanity. And I think that's what's great about Shazam, is that he's a boy. He's a child who is now he's being thrust into grown-up situations where things are literally life and death. So as long as DC stays on this line of, let's explore the humanity of these characters, and take them from a place of like godlike stature and kind of bring them down a little bit. Let's make them relatable so that we can have great stories. We can continue with great stories. We can see them like one of the huge selling points of the Avengers. Yes, superheroes. Yes, they save the day. Blah blah. Yes, action and whatever. But they hate each other. They do not get along. They are not a functioning team. And it's so endearing. And I think we need more of that. That's why Justice League just didn't work. Hey, I'm putting a team together. I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you. I don't want to be a part of it. Okay, I'll be part of your team, right?
Yeah.
What is it about your team that doesn't function? Like, okay, great. Superman died in Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, and then he was brought back to life in the very next movie. but he was weird for a minute. Yeah, he was weird for a minute, but he broke out of it, and he came in Deus Ex Machina style and saved the day. Josh, you say that you're not the biggest superhero fan, but what are some things that you would like to see from the future Justice League movies?
That's a good question. I think you hit a lot of nails on the head. I think I love the idea of any godlike character, any character that is like by its very nature not human or sort of a higher deity, to sort of somehow bridge that gap between and that character. Now, which is not to say that there can't be some sort of level of fantasy involved. I mean, not every character has to be like us in every single way. I mean, that's the beauty of fantasy. We don't go see, you look at Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like Groot and Rocket Raccoon don't have to be like oh, that's me, but at the same time they do have personalities that are very human. So point being, taking the godlike characters and bringing them down to our level so we can say, hey, okay, I can see where you're coming from, as opposed to the Marvel characters who are these flawed characters, and we're trying to bringing them up and oh, I want to be like them. I can, I'm flawed, but I can also overcome my problems, and I use my abilities to try to do that. So I think what I'd like to see is, I think, sort of an awareness of that. But again, these universes and these worlds are so ingrained with fandom, and they're so ingrained with opinion, and they're so ingrained with how it should be. Superman's been around forever, Batman's been around forever. So everyone's got their own ideas of how it should turn out. So that's the other issue, is that it's hard for a company, Marvel or DC, to sort of appease everybody. I think they need to be bold. I think they have to make bold decisions, and they have to stick by those decisions for the long term. Just like Marvel had a long game with their universe, I think DC has to sort of stick to their guns on that and start and really lay some foundational work. Maybe do individual movies for each of them. And then bringing them together, because that's essentially what Marvel did, right? They did all these individual movies of these characters and then said, now we're bringing them together. So maybe they just each of them need an individual movie, and I don't know if they've already done a lot of that. Again, I'm not as familiar with the universe, but maybe that's a way into.
No, I agree with you. I think that's the way to do it. DC tried at the beginning of their DCEU universe. They tried to jump the gun and jump straight into a Justice League movie, and of course that didn't work. They rushed everything. We didn't care. It was because this is a completely different universe. Why should we care about this version of Batman? Why should we care about this version of Superman? And they didn't really, Man of Steel, they kind of did that, but they didn't really lay the groundwork for any of the characters. And that was a shame. It was a shame. It all kind of failed a little bit, but, oh, go ahead.
Well, plus the nice thing that you can do with an individual, you said, you can really sort of solidify an emotional attachment to that character. You can give them, they did it with Superman in a way. They had Man of Steel, and they had because if you give a character an arc through a whole movie, and then you go through this journey with this character, once they are in this group setting, you have this history with them already that you can kind of go, I've been through a journey with you. I care about where you go here. So that when there is internal conflict, it means more to you than just seeing a couple people fight that you could, I don't know any of them. It's if you are in the middle of a fight in your family, it's going to be much more dramatic because you know your family very intimately, and you know the sides, you understand it, versus watching a fight on the street and going, oh, that's interesting, and then just kind of walking by. There's no investment there. So I think that's it. Just the ability to get invested in characters more, so that when these big things happen, then you can kind of care about it.
I mean, what's the word that I'm looking for? That's the key. That's the foundation. That's that's what's paramount.
The essence.
I mean, you need to care about character. You need to have a good story. You need to have a good character and a reason why to care about these characters, and also, an entry point. But this is all story stuff and the storytelling details. But question that I want to find out from you guys is, how would you go about fixing the DCEU? Can it come back? I believe that it can, and I believe that it should continue. I feel that we need more of these, because we can only benefit, right? We can only benefit from having more superhero stories and tales to tell. We have a massive massive library to fall upon and, to draw inspiration from. So, like, what are some of the stories that you would like to see? How do we fix the DCEU? And, who are your favorite characters? What are your favorite DCEU movies? Jump down to the comment section. Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys, with all that down and out of the way, it's time to take some of your live questions. So let's jump in and take your live questions.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Let's take some live questions. And this particular, we really only have one comment, really. This is from Danny Doran. Danny, if you're still watching, thank you, sir, for watching. Thanks for being a part of the community. And Josh, if I may.
Yes.
Let me just resize your window here. Guys, I know this is so annoying. This is probably more annoying for me than it is for anyone else watching, but you know my streaming software likes to resize my guests' windows, and it's annoying. Anyway. So Danny Doran writes, my boss and I are watching your program right now. He's intrigued to find out what you do. Love your show, brother. Raging fan here. Well, Danny, thank you so much. That really means a lot. And, this is not the first time that you've offered these types of sentiments or statements. And like I said, it's genuinely pleasing to hear that the things that you're working on, the things that you do, that other people do take pleasure and joy in. I think, like, as an actor, as a comedian, as a performer, this is something that we all aspire to, right? There's, who was it? Milton Berle very famously was being interviewed on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he was asked, like, what is it about being a comedian? What is it about being a performer that draws you to this profession? And without skipping a beat, Milton Berle looks straight into the camera and says, "Look at me, look 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 at me." Like, there's this idea that we need to be validated on a certain level that maybe we didn't get validated when we were children. Who knows? But here we are, here we are. It's always pleasing to know that the things that bring us joy, the things that we like to do, that other people also find joy in. Josh, what has been your experience in this regard?
Yeah, that's I think that's fun. It's funny, and it's kind of true. It's just like, I don't know. There's something about, it's hard to put into words, but just the idea of getting up and eliciting a reaction from someone, making them laugh, and so going, kind of being able to do that for an audience and going, okay, like, I'm going to come up here and start with nothing, and from nothing we're going to get a reaction out of you, and that reaction is going to make you happy. It's going to make you feel good. It's going to bring joy to you. It's going to bring joy to me. The more you're laughing, the more I'm happy with it. So it's this relationship, and all going well, we both leave happier. We both leave more fulfilled. And, it's kind of a win-win situation. So, yeah, that's a good point. And just the love of getting to be silly and stupid. And, I sort of look at around the world and I see people sort of, you have to dress in your suit and tie every day and you go into work, and nothing wrong with that. But I love the idea of being able to go, what, today I'm going to play, someone from outer space. And tomorrow I'm going to be a character who, is fighting dragons or whatever. So it's like, you have this ability to sort of kind of go, I get to live in all these different fun worlds for a little while too, like performance-wise.
Especially as an improviser,
so
I think that's one of the huge gifts that we get to have as improvisers, is that it's not just that you get to play like whatever fantastical character or situation. Like, I've played a potato on stage before, and like, to figure out like what does a potato feel like internally, is something that you don't ever think about in the real world.
You, on the inside, let's be honest, you're usually pretty baked. Thanks. Sorry.
Oh dear. Yeah, I mean,
Whoa.
Hey, great joke, great pun, right?
Sorry.
But yeah, no, it's the idea, it's the perspective, it's the point of view that you get to do the things that you want to do and explore other aspects of life or non-life, really. and bring life to certain ideas, creations, characters, and just hopefully, I guess the goal is, first of all, internal joy, and second of all, external joy. Like giving joy to other people and enriching their lives, or at the very least, making someone think about something. I end every single show by saying, we all have different thoughts and opinions, and sometimes those thoughts and opinions clash, right? And so, infuse some kindness into the world, that whole thing. And at the very least, I feel like that's what we should be aiming for, striving for. Yes, a lot of entertainment is just entertainment, but without some kind of a reason for being, sometimes it just becomes noise. And sometimes noise is fine. Like, noise has its place as well. But what's the purpose? What's the drive? What's the narrative there?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And also, I love the idea that, like, when we're younger, we had this natural instinct of play, which is this idea that we're going to exert energy into something that is not essential to our existence at this moment. Like, we're going to give our attention and focus to something that doesn't necessarily need it right now, just for the sake of existing. And we kind of do that as kids just naturally because we have all this ability to do that, right? Like, most of our needs are taken care of for us, and sometimes they're not, and that's always, that's a whole nother story. But when you're a kid, you just naturally want to play. And I think as we're adults, that sort of gets chipped away for a lot of different reasons, whether it's like, no, we need to be more serious, I need to focus on my career, whatever. And then we lose that ability to play. And that's I think things of great creators, great performers, great artists, is that you always see that sparkle in their eye of joy, of like creation, of play. They just want to create for the sake of creating and just sort of exist and exert that energy on something that is non-essential, but is for the sake of building it. Build the sandcastle. It's going to get knocked down, but
well, as you say,
you build it anyway.
There's this idea that exists that when you hit a certain age, that you should stop playing. Like, the imagination or creativity should be halted, and you wear the tie and you go to work and you wear the suit, and that idea of play is no longer acceptable, and that's what I find unacceptable. I understand, like, we moved way off the topic of movies and television shows. We're talking about live theater and inspiration and creativity, but it's all cyclical. Like, it all comes back around. And without that energy, without that creativity, without that inspiration and childlike play nature, I rarely get, if you're talking about religion, I rarely get into like deep doctrine. I like to keep it about the basics. If we're talking comedy, I rarely get into like the existential nature of like what it means to play a potato onto, like, no, let's just go to the basics. Like, what are the basics? The who's, the what's, the where's, what's your motivation, what's your drive, and make it really personal. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that I like to build on and drive off of, because I feel that's primarily where your creation comes from. That's
right. We watched the movie Frankenweenie the other night, the Tim Burton one.
I literally just watched that like last week as well.
Did
yeah,
you?
On a whim.
It's so great. It's I forgot what a fun, great movie that is.
Silly.
But they have there's like a Disney that has the sort of extra features and stuff, and one of the creator name, but she was talking about, she's like, if you create life without love, you create a monster. If you create life with love, you create a hero. And I think that's maybe a little too sort of like rigid in terms of like black and white, sort of yay or nay. But I do think the point there is, if you create something with play, with joy, you're going to create something that brings that sort of attracts and going back to what we're talking about with Marvel and DC, like, there is a playfulness to the Marvel movies. There is a sort of joy and sort of almost a frivolity in a weird way that is there, that it's sort of light and it can kind of float. And I do feel like some of the DC movies, and maybe it's the sort of the characters. I mean, Batman's a very heavy character for a reason, but there is a sort of heaviness there and a darkness there. But even some of the great incarnations of Batman, like the animated series and the Tim Burton one, and even to some extent the Christopher Nolan one, there is a sort of sense of play there. There is some.
Well, if you want to talk about play in Batman, I mean, look no further than Adam West in the 1966 Batman television series. Like, that is all just complete tongue in cheek, ridiculous play. And it's wonderful.
Totally. And super popular because it also knew what it was, and it wasn't trying to be something else. It wasn't trying to force itself into something else. It was like, you know what, we're very silly and this is ridiculous, but we're going to commit hard to it, and we love it. And you could kind of tell there was love put into it. And I think without getting too sort of mushy and altruistic and like, you know, whatever about that idea, I do think that's genuine though. And I think that's why you see all these fans have these such visceral reactions, is because these are properties that they love, and when they see that it sort of doesn't jive with what their idea of it is,
That's true.
this sort of passion and love comes out, and they go, oh, this is not Star Wars, or oh, this is not Batman, or whatever it is, whatever they have. And that's because they love it, and that's because there is passion there. So I think that, bottom line, joy and passion and play is hopefully the essence that you get out of something creative.
So
movies.
So Danny, I know that we kind of took a very hard left turn with your comment there, but thank you so much for commenting. Thanks for being a part of the conversation and for inspiring such, you know, I tend to think this is lively discussion. And yeah, thanks for being a part of that. Josh, I'd like to offer you a huge thank you for coming on the show today. You know, everything that you do just adds another level of whimsy and sustenance and actually deep insight. I mean, granted, you're not the biggest comic book movie fan, but I mean, you offer a lot of insight. So thank you so much for offering that and being a part of the show today. Go ahead and tell our viewers what projects you have coming up and where they can find you online.
Sure. I just want to say thank you too. I love this. I love the show, and I love the ability to sort of get to deep dive into these topics of the day. And I think you do it so well. So thank you for having me on. I love God of the Movies. Oh, I did have a suggestion possibly for the name of the.
Oh yeah, lay it on me.
I don't know if I can get it right, but Mike's Magic, or let's see, Mike's Marvelous Gotta Love Them Movies Museum, or something to that effect.
but. Quote or something to that effect needs to be in the title as well. Yeah,
sure. Mike's Marvelous Movie. Mike's Marvelous Gotta Love Them Movies Museum.
Or I like the idea of calling it a museum. You know, when Josh, you and I were living together, because you're a toy collector as well. We put all of our toy collection. Like, you think this is a lot of stuff? Ooh.
We got combined. Our powers combined. We got a lot of crazy.
It really was
stuff.
kind of a museum. So I loved it. It was so good. Mike's Marvelous Movie Museum, is that what it was?
Mike's Magic Gotta Love Them Movies Museum, or I think Marvelous is better. Mike's Marvelous Gotta Love Them Movies Museum.
I'll have to run it by Mr. Jonathan Pitts and see what he has to say about it. But Josh, what projects do you have coming up?
You can catch me if you want to hear. If you want me to talk into your ear for a while, I can read a book to yours or something of the like. You can find me. You can just look me up, Josh Hurley, and some of the stuff that I've done will come up. You can check it out there. You can always check me out on Twitter at JoshuWhat. I don't tweet as much lately, but I have some stuff there and a few projects here and there. Working on some projects with some friends. Tracy Mull.
I wanted to ask you about that. So you and Tracy just worked on a Halloween show together. It ran for 2 nights. I can't remember quite the name of it, but the idea is that you have these 2 skeletons who wake up in a graveyard and they put on like a vaudevillian comedy show for the moon. You did 2 showings of it. Like, how did that go?
There's still a few more showings.
Oh, okay.
It's going really well. First and foremost, of course, is like where we are right now. It's a little bit more open, a little bit more breathable in terms of like going to things and doing things, but also like we're being very like it's very safe and very very we want.
Sure, yeah.
That's number one thing, but it's gone well. I think everyone's seemed to have a good time. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's hard because I'm so close to it in terms of being like, oh, it's great, but I'm kind of the proud parent, so my opinion's a little bit more biased.
As you should be. Josh, as always, thank you so much for joining. And definitely look up Josh online and listen to some of his audiobooks.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what two skeletons putting on a vaudevillian show in front of the moon would want you to do. All right, guys, my name is Mr. Mike Brown. This is Gotta Love Them Movies, your daily dose of movie news. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy, busy, busy day to spend with us. You guys, everybody has their own thoughts and opinions in the world. We live in a really weird world right now. So, and sometimes some of those thoughts and opinions clash. So if you have an opportunity to infuse a little bit of kindness into the world, please take that opportunity. Please speak kind words to each other. And until tomorrow, have a beautiful evening.